Hi everyone, welcome back to my YouTube channel. In today's video, we will learn about the basics of HIPAA Privacy Rule, and HIPAA Security Rule. Let's get started. What is HIPAA? The Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act of 1996 is a federal law that requires the creation of national standards to protect sensitive patient health information from being disclosed without the patient's consent or knowledge. The U.S. Department of Health and Human Services issued the HIPAA Privacy Rule to implement the requirements of HIPAA. The HIPAA Security Rule protects a subset of information covered by the Privacy Rule. The HIPAA Privacy Rule. The HIPAA Privacy Rule establishes national standards to protect individuals' medical records and other individually identifiable health information, collectively defined as protected health information, and applies to health plans, healthcare clearinghouses, and those healthcare providers that conduct certain healthcare transactions electronically. The rule requires appropriate safeguards to protect the privacy of protected health information and sets limits and conditions on the uses and disclosures that may be made of such information without an individual's authorization. The HIPAA Privacy Rule also gives individuals rights over their protected health information, including rights to examine and obtain a copy of their health records, to direct a covered entity to transmit to a third party an electronic copy of their protected health information in an electronic health record, and to request corrections. What are the permitted uses and disclosures under the HIPAA Privacy Rule? The law permits but does not require a covered entity to use and disclose PHI without an individual's authorization for the following purposes or situations. Disclosure to the individual. If the information is required for access or accounting of disclosures, the entity must disclose to the individual. Treatment, payment, and healthcare operations. Opportunity to agree or object to the disclosure of PHI. An entity can obtain informal permission by asking the individual outright or by circumstances that clearly give the individual the opportunity to agree, acquiesce, or object. Other permitted uses and disclosures are incident to an otherwise permitted use and disclosure, limited data set for research, public health, or healthcare operations, public interest and benefit activities. The privacy rule permits use and disclosure of PHI without an individual's authorization or permission for 12 national priority purposes. When required by law, public health activities, victims of abuse or neglect or domestic violence, health oversight activities, judicial and administrative proceedings. Other national priority purposes are law enforcement, functions such as identification concerning deceased persons, cadaveric organ, eye, or tissue donation, research under certain conditions to prevent or lessen a serious threat to health or safety, essential government functions, workers' compensation. What is HIPAA Security Rule? While the HIPAA Privacy Rule safeguards PHI, the Security Rule protects a subset of information covered by the Privacy Rule. This subset is all individually identifiable health information a covered entity creates, receives, maintains, or transmits in electronic form. This information is called Electronic Protected Health Information, or ePHI. The security rule does not apply to PHI transmitted orally or in writing. To comply with the HIPAA security rule, all covered entities must ensure the confidentiality, integrity, and availability of all electronic PHI. detect and safeguard against anticipated threats to the security of the information, protect against anticipated impermissible uses or disclosures that are not allowed by the rule, certify compliance by their workforce. Covered entities should rely on professional ethics and best judgment when considering requests for these permissive uses and disclosures. The HHS Office for Civil Rights enforces HIPAA rules, and all complaints should be reported to that office. HIPAA violations may result in civil, monetary, or criminal penalties. The security rule requires covered entities to maintain reasonable and appropriate administrative, technical, and physical safeguards for protecting electronic PHI. What are administrative safeguards? First on the list is security management process. A covered entity must identify and analyze potential risks to electronic PHI, and it must implement security measures that reduce risks and vulnerabilities to a reasonable and appropriate level. Number two on the list is security personnel. A covered entity must designate a security official who is responsible for developing and implementing its security policies and procedures. Information access management. Consistent with the privacy rule standard limiting uses and disclosures of PHI to the minimum necessary, the security rule requires a covered entity to implement policies and procedures for authorizing access to electronic PHI only when such access is appropriate based on the user or recipient's role-based access. Workforce training and management. A covered entity must provide for appropriate authorization and supervision of workforce members who work with electronic PHI. A covered entity must train all workforce members regarding its security policies and procedures and must have and apply appropriate sanctions against workforce members who violate its policies and procedures. Evaluation. A covered entity must perform a periodic assessment of how well its security policies and procedures meet the requirements of the security rule. Physical safeguards. Under physical safeguards, we have facility access and control. A covered entity must limit physical access to its facilities while ensuring that authorized access is allowed. Workstation and device security. A covered entity must implement policies and procedures to specify proper use of and access to workstations and electronic media. A covered entity also must have in place policies and procedures regarding the transfer, removal, disposal, and reuse of electronic media to ensure appropriate protection of electronic protected health information or EPHI. Technical safeguards. First on the list is access control. A covered entity must implement technical policies and procedures that allow only authorized persons to access electronic protected health information. Audit controls. A covered entity must implement hardware, software, and slash or procedural mechanisms to record and examine access and other activity in information systems that contain or use electronic protected health information. Integrity controls. A covered entity must implement policies and procedures to ensure that electronic PHI is not improperly altered or destroyed. Electronic measures must be put in place to confirm that electronic PHI has not been improperly altered or destroyed. Transmission security. A covered entity must implement technical security measures that guard against unauthorized access to electronic PHI that is being transmitted over an electronic network. Hope you found this information beneficial. If you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing to my channel. Thank you for joining me. Bye now.